Hello and welcome to UWS Careers Cafe, where we discuss fresh career insights for students, graduates, and anyone navigating the ever-evolving world of work. I'm your host, Ona Ramsey, and today's episode is all about breaking barriers and blazing trails. We are diving into the topic of widening access and participation in higher education in the UK and exploring the inspiring success story of our graduate who has defied the odds and triumphed against challenges. Joining us today is Ian Kenji, a recent graduate who's journeyed through the educational landscape with determination and resilience. Hi, Ian. Welcome to UWS Careers Cafe. It's fantastic to have you.
Thank you very, very much for having me. I'm very honored to be here today.
I know you are an associate lecturer, a tutor, and doctoral researcher.
Yes, no, thank you very much. Introduce myself as Ian. I'm someone that's kind of had an academic journey. And I suppose someone that's had a few challenges in my story. My background stemmed in Kenya, in Nairobi, up until the age of 5. I had a very good upbringing. My mum had a good job back home, and I was in a sort of good school. And then my mum kind of met a fellow Kenyan man who invited us to come to the UK. So we came, and our journey kind of started. We moved to England. And from when we started, and things never sort of, worked out the way we anticipated. And we had to start a journey all over again in the UK, in a foreign country, which was quite scary. My mother had my little sister. There was a conversation with a lady in a women's refuge, and she said to my mum, she said that, they're going to ask you where you want to go. The place that you really want to go is Scotland. She'd said that the air was clean, the roads were big, and the people were friendly. And that is really where we started our journey, far away from Kenya anyway. So we had to somewhat reinvent ourselves. I spent most of my time growing up in the schools here in Scotland and Glasgow. I think kind of from my experience when I was quite young, having to deal with certain things, I actually wanted to be in the field of law, judiciary. So I was actually wanting to be a police officer, and then I was also wanting to be a lawyer as well. My mum always used to say to me, "You're a lawyer." That was the influence for my career choice at the time.
Thank you for opening up and sharing your story with us, because we all have different stories, but not everybody is willing to talk about it openly. And I think it requires courage and also sharing this hardship with others, because when people are going through difficult times, it seems like it's never ending. And actually, when you're in that situation, it can be difficult. So with many students who are listening to our chat today, if they're going through difficult times and things, they might think that, going through difficult times, but also now you are through it, you're on the other side of it, and there's better days waiting for you. So what were some of the biggest challenges you faced while pursuing your education or career, and how did you overcome them?
When you're kind of going through the journey, I think there's always kind of that idea that things one day will be perfect. I think what once gave you pain will start to give you strength. And I think at the stage and journey of where I am right now, being honest and actually sharing my story, it's helping me not only get closure, but it's also helping other people be able to reinvent themselves. But it is translatable in a lot of ways. Certain situations, then the same can be applied, like you say, to students and to anyone else in sort of their personal life. So when I was finishing up my high school studies, my mum had time in the hospital. It was actually life-changing. At the time, she'd kind of, caught like a serious infection like septicemia, and there was all sorts of things failing with her system. It was like all of a sudden I'm in my 4th year. I've got a little sister. There's no other family, not really, in the UK, in our situation that could really look after us. And so now you realise how exposed you've been, because we had to actually get put in the care system, which was very scary. And then the other thing was there was no end in sight. You don't know when you're going to see your mother again and if she's even going to make it. So for me, that was probably, I would say, the hardest obstacle relating to my life, but also my education and career, because at that point in time, everything happening has a direct impact on my future, because, we're talking about being at a stage where now you're picking classes and making life decisions as to sort of who you want to become and your contribution to society and what you want for a career path. That was one of the biggest challenges. So unfortunately, like I said, I'd wanted to become a lawyer. Given what had happened sort of with my mum's health at the time, I wasn't able to pull the grades I needed. I had to then go and do my sixth year, and I was still kind of primarily caring for my mum, and she was lucky to have a near escape. She made it out of the hospital, and I didn't really lose her at that time. But in a lot of ways, I would say there was an immediate transition from being a boy to a man. So that for me meant that my focus and priorities had to be revolving around looking after my mum and her health, and I couldn't really focus on my studies as well. So what the grades I might have needed to become a lawyer, which I could have been more than capable to do, I wasn't actually able to pull that at the time, given what I was up against. So I would say that was a big challenge. And that led me actually to going and doing college in my second hobby, which was computing. So I was always a bit of a geek. Growing up, my mum, she never let me have a games console. She always said, I'm a single parent, I can't afford it. And there was nothing I could really say to that. But she always did let me have a computer and have books and engage in that way. So I went to do a computing in college, which then actually opened the door for me getting into the west of Scotland to do my undergraduate in computing. I think really that was the start of me somewhat, on the right track. But then I did kind of come to a roadblock when I was doing my computing degree. Things at home again, just looking after my mother, and things being quite difficult, which then meant that I just left at my third year. I didn't see it through to the fourth year, which I was very disheartened about. I went and got a job, a corporate job. I was now in this corporate environment, and I felt like I was maybe destined for more. I had felt like my morale was a little bit low at the time, and I kind of had to make a decision as to who I was going to be and what I was going to do. And I actually utilized one of the career service, and I was given advice on sort of what I can do. I wanted to venture out a little bit into business because there was that interpersonal element of communication. Okay, if I can't be a lawyer, I'm sure I can talk my way into a sort of boardroom. And so that was my bright idea: complete a master's degree within the west of Scotland, my MBA, and I was supported through that, not only by the career service, but actually by the School of Business, which also heavily helped me with that process, as well as the School of Computing. There was kind of a joint effort across the board within the institution when I got that MBA, and actually starting that journey and transitioning. That I would say has been the biggest turning point in my life, and because that then unlocked a sort of whole array of opportunities.
It was your mom's dream, your potential to be a
Yes.
lawyer, and things changed because of a life-changing events, and you were in care, and then you turned to be a carer yourself as well. So all these different things happening, and then you managed to get into college, and
Hmm.
you went from college to UWS.
So I actually had completed a HNC. It was in the city of Glasgow College, it was a really game-changing experience because you were kind of put through a series of tests to kind of get you to that graded unit and to sort of like gear you up for your university life. And I think my HNC, I always say that was one of the hardest years of my life. Even since being in uni, I don't feel like anything's been as hard as that. So I really I'm grateful I went through that journey. But yes, I ended up starting actually in year one because I wanted to have that whole university experience.
Mm.
And that was where I started again. But ironically, I was quite young even when I went to college. So when I went to college, I was 17. And
Mhm.
so when start off in University of West of Scotland for my computing degree, it was quite funny how even though I had stayed in fifth year, sixth year, even one year doing a college degree, I was still able to kind of, not that age matters, but it wasn't kind of too late. I was still young enough to start that journey. That life-changing situation, I know it was down to that because I would have been more than capable of actually achieving that opportunity. But nonetheless, it's not always about, when things go wrong. It's about being able to turn things around when they do go wrong. And I suppose that's the message that I really want to get across. Um, but I always sort of laugh with my mum. I'm going back to the drawing board to sort of reinvent the wheel. I always say that to my mum. When things for me go wrong, I really go back to the drawing board and I physically write them down on a piece of paper and I sit there and do some deep thinking.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really, really important. Having that resilience, not giving up, and
Mm.
exploring different options. And also, you are a great example that when you study one subject, you don't have to stick to one. You can also top up with different qualifications, like doing your MBA. So when you did your master's, you topped up with even fantastic, qualifications. So why did you choose to do MBA, not like into computing?
Venturing into the world of business was kind of a steady progression. It was the next step for me. It was natural. My mom does always say to me, she goes, computing opened up your brain. So it was a very technical degree. I was doing computer networking, and I felt like now I had built the skills and resilience I needed to sort of go into the field of business. The field of business was something that I could thrive in and excel in. And I thought, let me actually harness other skills that I now have that I've built, through resilience and through lived experience. What happened is the university had said, look, if you can get your bachelor's degree, it doesn't need to be an honours. They said, we'll take into account your professional experience, because I used the bachelor's degree. I went out and got, like I said, the corporate job. Said, we'll contextualize your situation. We'll use your personal experience from your job, and then we'll also use your bachelor's degree, and we'll allow you to get into an MBA, which is a master's degree. We talk about real life experiences, and they took into account my situation, and they understood, and they supported me through that. And that's why I'm very thankful to the institution for the support.
That's amazing. Yeah. So sometimes we should be looking outside the box and ask for help. And people are willing to help. And I think UWS in general is quite friendly, community-based university. So people are willing to help out a lot of the times, I feel, as well. So now, let's talk about now. So you tell me that you're a PhD, like doctoral researcher. So what's happening there?
I was actually able to get a teaching opportunity at an institution in Edinburgh. So it was a teaching role, and there was elements, it was kind of a dual role. So you were teaching a couple of days a week, and you were also doing some research. That was my sort of first opportunity to sort of scaling and getting into an academic career, because when I completed my MBA, I got a corporate job in finance. So I was working for one of the biggest sort of banks in the high street, Lloyds Bank, but it was a corporate job based in Edinburgh. And I did somewhat enjoy the corporate life, but I felt like I had actually got used to that opportunity with the MBA got me used to studying and got me used to researching, and I actually found something that I was good at, that I enjoyed. Because now when I completed the MBA, I completed with a very good grade. I then wanted to kind of get back into academia. So when the opportunity came in Heriot-Watt, they were more than happy to take me on board, because I had the MBA and because of other sort of experiences. Because when they took me onto that teaching opportunity, they took me through teaching qualifications and teaching certificates. But then that opened the door more for an academic career. And so now I'm able to actually teach in different universities. That's one of my roles in the west of Scotland. So now I'm supervising students in the MBA program, a bit like how I was supervised. And I'm also teaching a few days a week, at a different institution. I've actually been enrolled on to do a PhD in the University of Glasgow in the School of Economics. And so again, I've changed field again from business to economics. And I'm now grateful that I've gone through the journey. Not only have I come back full circle, like I say, not allowing things that have gone wrong to detrimentally impact me.
You grabbed opportunities with both hands, and also you created your own pathways, using your initiative, being proactive. So were there any key mentors or support system?
I would say there was definitely key mentors, for example, in my church, that actually are academics, that were able to sort of help me along that journey. When we talk about your network, especially when you've come from sort of certain lived experiences, you want to be able to have a support system. That is the most important thing. Who you can confide in and who can give you advice and support. And again, that's really important in terms of decision making, because there'll be times you have to make really critical decisions in your life, and sometimes you need the voice of reason. It's not always about having people that will agree with everything you say. Better to have people who can give you constructive criticism and who can actually help put things in perspective, because they have certain life experience. But for me, the professional network has been relationships that I built when I was in some of these professional capacities. So you build relationships with people, certain academics who have helped me. Now, it's important when you are looking at the support available to you, you need to know what you need support for. You need to actually look at your situation truthfully and assess, okay, what can I do a bit of assistance with? And who can maybe help me with that? And the support I could have maybe utilised when I was at the University of the West of Scotland. So obviously I had that, situation where my little sister were in care and things weren't great. If I'm being honest with you, I didn't have the courage at the time to speak on that. I just didn't want to talk about that. Tell us your story. I don't want to sound like a victim, to be honest with you. I didn't want to sound like I wasn't in control somewhat of my own situation. I just wrote that situation off in my mind. I'll be honest. What had happened to my mom and, maybe time I was in the system. Because I do think about that a lot. I think God knows, God knows if my mum never made it, who I would be and maybe where I would be. I know for a fact we wouldn't be having this conversation. So for me, it was a very sort of sensitive topic. And so I didn't want to, even hear about care experience support, for example. Now, even at my time, when I was going through this academic journey, when I got into West of Scotland, the Scottish government hadn't actually had provisions in place to really support maybe care experienced students as much as they do now. So now, if you are care experienced, not only do you get your fees paid for, but you also get a bursary, which actually is more than a student loan altogether. And you actually are entitled to live in accommodation, which is provisioned by the government, because they know if at some stage in your journey you have been care experienced and you have been in the system, they know you don't have a support system. So if I had utilized that support by being honest about my situation, I don't know if the support was available then. I know the Scottish government introduced it not too long ago, but even having that care experience support in the team would have made a difference, and I never utilized it. So I think that's sort of when we talk about mentors and support systems, you need to look and break it down into personal, and then also from a sort of careers perspective and personal development perspective. But you then also need to look at your individual situation and see what support is available out there, and really having the confidence and courage to seek for help. And as someone who has had a lot of help along the way, I'm at a stage where I'm now giving help, because at one stage I wasn't in a position to even, I was only in a position to receive help, but now I'm in a position to give it. But there are people that will give help. And like you said, in Scotland, there is a lot of support available. And Scotland is my home. I love it to bits. And that's one thing I've always said, even to family members back home in Scotland, if you reach out and you need something, you will always be supported.
I like the fact that, you're not a victim, have that mentality. I think that's really, really important. And sometimes people have this attitude, perhaps one event in your life determine or define who you are, kind of thing. But
Yep.
we move on, we change, we go through different journeys, and also we have different identities depending on where we are. So I was wondering, have you ever encountered any stereotypes or biases related to your background in your professional life? And if so, how have you addressed them?
You really seem to understand everything that sort of happened in even on an individual level, the mentality that you have to have. I would definitely agree with what you're saying about not having a victim mentality, because it's all about perspective, right? I could be looking at one thing with a specific set of lens. You could be looking at something with another set of lens. So that's one thing I've never allowed to be the case. And that's something, I'll be honest, if I was to put myself under an umbrella, we could be here all day, right? Single parent background, Black African, Black Norwegian, Scottish, whatever, care experience, postcode deprivation. I mean, come on, we could be here absolutely all day long, and I could carry all these umbrellas, but really what I've had to do is encapsulate all those things into one and represent myself properly. Because, for example, I think there's never been a better time to be Black. I think that there's a lot of things that I can do in my situation to empower myself, and I put a positive spin on negative situations. So in terms for me, sort of stereotypes, and is that the question? Stereotypes and biases relating to my background? I would say to some extent, But because I don't really let them really define me, I think either I'm not aware of it because people will keep a lot of their biases and stereotypes to themselves, or it will just be more surprised than anything. So, and I like to be organic and I like to be who I am, and I don't want to change just because of this or just because of that, but I am still who I am. I'm still the same Ian Kenji from years ago. I don't really feel like I get as much bias. I think what I do get is a lot of there's always that shock factor, that shock element. Oh wow, teach or you lecture. Wow, all right. There's always a shock, and for one point I did ask myself, why does everyone get surprised? Why is that so surprising? It could be a bias, it could be a stereotype, but I think more than anything, it's telling of an individual who, because I have that relatable element, but yet I'm maybe in a field that people might not see a lot of this representation. Again, let's contextualize things. Within the higher education sector, for example, there might be a lot of Black people within the sector, but a lot of them could be coming from Africa. How many Black domestic individuals are in the sort of research or academic teaching field? I think the statistics are like they say 2% of people in the UK have, let's say, up to a doctorate level education. Now, if we then contextualize that, how many come from this background or come from that background? So I think more than anything, it's the fact that you've packaged an identity somewhat because of different experiences you've been through, packaged it in a positive way. You've then put a positive spin on it, and people now can actually see, and it does reflect on you as an individual. People can actually say, wow, and then that's not taking into account, then people getting to hear your story. I'm having this honest conversation with you because I think it's important for people in certain backgrounds to really hear and understand that they can achieve it and do things too. Because I'll be honest, people from my background before always say to me, oh, yeah, I hear you doing this and I hear you doing that. And it's almost like they can't do it. Using your experiences in a positive way, letting that be a positive catalyst for change, representing that brand. And that's really what I call it. It's a brand.
Great to hear because, as you say, you are your own brand. We are all our own brands. When I
Mm,
talk students, I say, whether you like it or not, you are
mm,
your brand. So might
mhm.
as well, represent yourself and be proactive and do something for your own good, because that's exactly what you have been doing. And I'm sure you will be doing it and also creating these opportunities for others as well. So you have already started doing that, which is fantastic. So in what ways do you think institutions and workplaces can better support students from widening access backgrounds?
I'll be honest, Ugana, I think the most important thing is having dreams and aspirations that are ambitious and aspiring enough. Interestingly enough, people that come from widening access backgrounds have a certain level of resilience, intrinsic resilience. They've seen some things from a very early age, things that they've had to overcome, but they don't actually realize it's a social token and it's a currency that they can use. Well, actually, if you overcame this situation, that means you can overcome that situation. So it's actually about unlocking potential, one, and two, harnessing the lived experiences and transmutating a lot of these negative experiences into positive ones. But before we talk about that, there has to be something aspirational to achieve that fire and flame. We look at the situation of individuals who come from widening and access backgrounds, better armory to equip them to deal with their situation because they all have more real life and challenging situations. The bills are due. They're maybe coming from a certain background. They might not have a support system. When you come from a lot of these backgrounds, people in your background, your environment might not support what you're talking about. So you've come from an environment that has institutional and systemic trauma. And then whether it's people in your neighborhood or people in your immediate background, they have all this level of trauma, and then all of a sudden you're talking about things that nobody in that area, in that environment, in that cohort has been able to achieve. So then it's actually the institutions and setting really ambitious and aspirational targets to help them achieve what they want to achieve, breaking the mold, utilizing whatever resources they have, whether it's industry contacts or opportunities. And then the last aspect would be the mental aspect of it, where you really support someone's reasoning capacity and support someone mentally and emotionally, instilling confidence, but also dealing with things like self-doubt or imposter syndrome, things that are inevitable to happen to individuals who have never been in certain backgrounds. You're now putting someone who's all they've known is difficult situations, and then now they're in a really good situation. That can also be a shock factor. So it's about having that mentorship. That's what I would really say to institutions. And I think one thing that can be said about the University of the West of Scotland being in the grassroots community, I mean, they are literally in the heart of the community. And I think one thing that I would turn around, UWS, I would say you will succeed. I think that should be the new motto. The institution or the workplace can then learn from individuals like yourself because of your invaluable experience and your perspective on life. And that's really the dynamic that should be in place for institutions, but also individuals from these backgrounds being able to provide their viewpoint on a lot of things.
Great to hear your perspectives. We will be sharing this, management and leadership team as well, so people hopefully can pick or get inspired actually in different ideas. You will succeed sounds like a great, slogan for
You will
UWS.
succeed. Yeah, you will succeed. That is it. You will succeed. We need to turn it around. People need to know that it is practical. It can be done. And I think the good thing I like about UWS is that there's a lot. They're very patient. It's a community-led institution, like you said. But actually, there needs to be more of a connection, I think, between the students from these backgrounds and also management, where they can really dial in and hear the right voices from the right place.
Absolutely, yes, I agree. And also, interestingly, I was listening to your tips or what institutions should do. Most of them are about unlocking potential, not so much the ability academically. I think once people's, mindset is unlocked, when they can do things, they can learn the skills, they can advance their knowledge. Whereas the attitude is the most important thing to tackle through, to have the resilience to go on and to find these opportunities or create these different paths for themselves. So that is a fantastic analogies and also advice. So thank you very much for that. What goals do you still aspire to achieve in the future?
My goals to aspire to achieve in the future would be to complete my PhD, get to a stage where I have an active research profile. I also want to set up a charity to help individuals in the grassroots community. I want to make sure that individuals in this, I want to have sort of a mentorship system within the charity, and also mindset program, Life University. And then I think from there, the next stage for me is to get out of survival mode and to start living my life the way I want. And I think, again, that's a mindset shift. Wavelength where you're always kind of not appreciating some of the things that you're even achieving, some of the accomplishments. But then I realized that it's because I'm in survival mode. So for me, it's about doing things practically that will change my immediate situation, build a career in the academic sector, which I'm passionate about. But the next stage of my life is to see what value I can bring to society.
That's fantastic, because you know what it's like to receive. Very best of luck with those fantastic aspirations. So what would you say to somebody who in a similar background you were many years ago before you started your academic journey?
Firstly would be to dream. You really have to dream, create a very vivid and realistic picture of what you want to achieve. So you need to have that vision. The second thing I would say is, in the face of adversity, you need to show your strongest emotion, and that has to be strength. You have to pick yourself up and keep going. Stopping is not an option. You have to draw that strength from wherever your source of inspiration for that strength comes from. And the last thing I would say, to have a positive outlook in life, determination.
So, Ian, thank you for sharing your story with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very, very much for having me. I'm very honored to be here today.
You have been listening to the UWS Careers Cafe, the podcast from UWS Careers Team with hosts Una Ramsey and Nigel Royal, where we talk about everything related to student and graduate careers. If you have enjoyed listening to this episode, please check out the others in the series. Also, you can follow the link in the description to our website, where you will find an amazing array of career resources to help you forge your path to a rewarding career.